up, peeps? Now, we've decided to do something a little bit different today. Having recently experienced the incredible soundtrack that Assassin's Creed Valhalla had to offer, it got Moz and I asking ourselves about the greatest gaming soundtracks of all time and the best individual tracks within them. So we've compiled a top 10 list here, and as good as the Valhalla soundtrack is, spoiler alert, it doesn't make our top 10. This is just our personal, fully subjective opinion, so if you guys disagree, then please get in the comments and tell us how shockingly bad our ears are for picking these 10 and which soundtracks you think we've missed out.
We've gone for the main themes from games mostly, picking them based purely for the song on face value, how good it is, regardless of the game, then taking into consideration how well it suited the game, and then the impact it had on the game as well. Finally, the bias part, the nostalgia factor. Let's get started.
Very few gaming soundtracks immediately empower the player and make you feel like an invincible badass quicker than Kratos' main theme in 2018's God of War. It's as if you're taking part in a ritual ceremony where the player is being personally bestowed with the title of being a literal, all-powerful god. The deep rhythmic chanting of the choir combined with the ominous brass tones and the traditional Nordic strings becomes a foreboding Viking-inspired battle cry, as if a storm of pure carnage and brutality is incoming. The track is beyond imposing, and not just to highlight what a savage, irrepressible force Kratos is, but it also outlines the scale of the perilous journey the game's two protagonists will have to face ahead of them. You can imagine that composer Bear McCreary had the idea of a Viking longboat full of warriors en route to pillaging and decimating an entire civilization in mind when he composed this score. And in similar fashion, if you're a mythological Nordic nasty in this game, you best get the fuck out of Kratos' way unless you want a big old axe embedded in your face.
An incredible composition performed by the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. There's a variety in this piece that captures the game perfectly. There's almost a degree of uncertainty in the intro prior to the sample that we just played, which portrayed the beauty of Empire Bay as well as some of the light, heartfelt moments in the game. It's soon replaced by the violently sharp strokes of the violin, and the unforgiving, cruel and rule-abiding world of the Mafia begins, and the strongest image painted in my mind is a chilled and showery evening in Empire Bay with an emotionless Vito Scaletta wearing a typical and iconic trench coat with his hands buried deep inside the coat, one of which is holding a cold and steel black silenced pistol, stalking his next assassination order. The intensity and suspense is just awesomely encapsulated.
Journey has to be one of the most aesthetically charming and sumptuously designed pieces of art I've ever seen posing as a game, and the beauty of its soundtrack arguably surpasses its awe-inspiring visuals. The Call is the very first piece that we hear, and variations on this musical theme can be heard throughout the game. The somber cello arrangement at the start becomes a leitmotif for the player themselves throughout the game's story. The intensity of the piece begins to build and build as the orchestra is subtly introduced, before the piece then suddenly climaxes when it reaches its crescendo, with a lingering synth as the nameless robed traveller you play as is introduced on screen. The game's composer, Austin Wintory, said the crescendo was to, and I quote, "wipe the emotional palette clean, one big surge that leaves the player as a blank canvas," and that perfectly articulates how it makes you feel. The entire score is a breathtaking auditory journey in itself, and The Call elegantly sets the tone for one of the most epic, poignant and thought-provoking gaming experiences I've ever had.
Written by Jeremy Soule, there can't be a gamer alive who hasn't heard this at one point or another. The song has its own language, the language of the dragons. The translation can be found online easily, but it's not what's said in this piece, it's how it's performed. The sheer power in the vocals evoking a sense of inspiration and wonder, and once you've played the game, it all pieces together in your understanding behind the impact of the dragon's voice and their shouts. I'm not sure there's a single song in our top 10 that once I hear it, I've got to play Skyrim immediately. It's never uninstalled, and this epic masterpiece just demands that I explore the stunning and impressive world of Skyrim one more time.
For The Last of Us, Gustavo Santaolalla composed a score that is as sparse and desolate as the post-apocalyptic world that the game is set in, but also one that expertly captures the lingering sense of danger and the struggle to survive that challenges the player throughout. I vividly remember when I first heard the game's main theme in the trailer, and it immediately made me feel uneasy. The insidious creeping of those strings from the charango, which is a small South American instrument from the lute family, makes you feel like you're walking on a tense tightrope of rusty tripwire, and this perfectly embodies how you feel as Joel traversing this dystopian hellhole. It's uncomfortable, it's unnerving, and the fact that Gustavo actually used deliberately out-of-tune instruments on occasion when recording the music emphasises how the discordant tones perfectly capture the despondent mood of a very imperfect world.
Now this track is the closest on the list to hitting that epic cinematic level of utter beastliness, and why shouldn't it? Written by the renowned composer Hans Zimmer, known for masterpieces such as Time from Inception and Interstellar, though this piece is closer to the Dark Knight soundtrack in tone and meaning, a selfless suit-wearing hero who inspires long-lasting hope in humanity. The deep bass resonations likened to the power of the suit Alcatraz wears, whether he's smashing the concrete beneath him or the enemy in front of him. The gentle and subtle notes of the violin inducing that creeping sense of espionage as Alcatraz triggers his invisibility cloak before stalking his prey, and finally the harsh and unsettling droning electric notes really bringing forth the fear of an alien invasion. Hans Zimmer is a fucking genius.
I'll never forget when the trailer dropped for GTA 4, thinking, how are they going to top GTA 3? And the chills this song gave me when I first witnessed the visuals of Liberty, as well as the gameplay on offer. Few games have caused that level of excitement, and I'll always associate that with this song. Then on release, the game did not disappoint. The song suggests the playful nature of the GTA series as a whole, while also having the deeper, more meaningful notes similar to the not so playful and more emotionally demanding moments written into the amazing story. The song's called Soviet Connection, and there's a little nod in the tone of the song to the main man himself, Nico Bellic. Written by Michael Hunter, it's nothing short of phenomenal. In fact, I think we need to make another stupid rap video over this.
What composer Akira Yamaoka created for the second installment of the iconic survival horror series is nothing short of a masterpiece in creating mood, atmosphere and fear unlike anything I have ever experienced in a video game. The whole soundtrack is as palpable and invasive to the player's psyche as the town's dense fog is. It consumes the game's tormented protagonist, James Sunderland, but it somehow manages to achieve this in the most hauntingly beautiful way possible. It was almost impossible to choose one song from the soundtrack to encapsulate this feeling, but we eventually settled on Promise Reprise, which has kind of become the unofficial main theme of the game, at least in some players' eyes. Within the game, the song is played over James's encounter with Angela at the Blue Creek apartment building, and it really emphasises the helplessness, melancholy and denial of both characters' predicaments and their inability to confront and acknowledge their respective pasts. Overall, Promise Reprise makes for a despairingly beautiful piece of music that can reduce me to a shell of a man any day of the week.
The Metal Gear Solid main theme was originally composed by Tappy Iwase, and although it fit the original game of the series as snugly as Solid Snake's sweaty headband, it wasn't until Harry Gregson Williams got his hands on it for Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty where it was elevated to one of the most revered and distinguishable pieces of music in gaming history. He really modernised it with a genius blend of orchestral grandiose and electronic tonalities and breakbeats that helped propel the game to a cinematic level of scope and scale you'd expect from a Hollywood blockbuster thriller, which is not really surprising from someone who has worked with Hans Zimmer as closely as Gregson Williams has. Just like the narrative in the game, the soundtrack was way ahead of its time and was the ideal musical companion in exploring themes such as deceptive political agendas, secret societies, espionage, AI, and the omnipresent threat to humanity's freedom. The beautiful, crazy bastard Kojima did it again.
I'm sure a lot of you will find this choice a little bit controversial, but for me and Les it's an absolute no-brainer. We've been bigging up this tune ever since we've known each other, so nostalgia does play a big part in us placing this at number 1, but it encompasses everything you would want from a main gaming theme and more. It's impossible for a game to accurately do justice to the horrors of war and the physical and psychological toll it takes on everyone involved, including the loved ones of soldiers back home, but the main theme of Medal of Honor Frontline, composed by Michael Giacchino, captures so many of the emotions you would associate with war, particularly World War II where the game is set. It's almost like a military-themed collage of music. It starts with a deep, thunderous bang, followed by a haunting, high-pitched female vocal. The string section of the Northwest Symphonia underscores the vocals with a slow burn of dread before seamlessly changing tone and becoming hopeful and enlightening as the brass section comes in like cavalry to support. All this is within the first minute of the composition, but it manages to conjure up images of bravery, hope, fear, danger and liberty, which is not only gorgeous on the ears but also a poignant reminder of the sacrifices many made and continue to make on our behalf every day.
Thanks for watching, guys. Let us know in the comments what you think of our picks. Do you agree with some of them, or do you think our opinions outright suck? Let us know what your favourite pieces of gaming music are. We'd love to be introduced to some new tunes that we've never heard before. And who knows, we might end up making a revised update of this list, including some of your suggestions too. Catch you in the next one, peeps. Peace out!